So how's everyone today?
Good. How are you guys?
A little down and down. Just need to find more time to enjoy myself.
That's good.
That's good. That's good. That's good that I'm not feeling the greatest today.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, how would you know if you were going to feel great on other days if you don't feel bad some days?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
You gotta really enjoy those really good days.
Gotta have the downs to enjoy the ups, eh?
That's good. You enjoyed a yacht today. That's what I heard.
Said you gotta experience the downs to appreciate the ups, eh? As you get
Yes.
bored.
I'm going to be taking a tiny vacation and going camping. I don't know how camping is a vacation because there's bugs, lots of bugs and being outdoors, but I'm going on a vacation.
But that still feels that still seems really fun as long as you can keep them off you, eh?
Exactly.
Like uh like a bug's favorite snack.
I'm extra tasty.
Like a cheesecake for the bugs.
Where are you going camping?
We're going to Buckhorn. My parents have a tiny cottage type thing there. So we're going to go stay in the same area and then hang out with them.
Cool.
Gonna be fun. We're going to sit at a fireplace.
Well, do you want to get started? And then I know
We can get
someone emailed me that they would be late, so. You ready?
I'm ready. Look at me being ready. Ta-da!
All right, so I'll just open it up quickly. Thanks everyone for joining us. Sorry for the delay. I think the link in the email that I sent was towards the bottom, so I think it was missed. Some people will probably pop on and join us, but this is our third virtual Makers Night. Well, afternoon, I guess we should call it now, but that's okay. So thanks for joining us. We'll be doing this very often, so continue to follow the Henry Bernick Center on social media to see when the events are. For those that aren't familiar, the Henry Bernick Center assists entrepreneurs in four main areas with training, connections, funding, and mentorship. We bring all these areas together to surround an entrepreneur and help take their business or idea to the next level. I'll also introduce Virginia, who's our Peter B. Moore Makerspace coordinator, and all things awesome. So she'll be leading the workshop today and every other Maker Night that we put on. But she's a great gal to know if you ever want to update your skills, but I will let her get started.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a fun little, just before we get started here, about HBEC, because I added this in. So as Jenna mentioned, we want to help you grow your business or startup. We have mentorship, resources, funding, and we have support with prototyping once we get back on campus. So if you guys have business ideas and you're thinking of starting a business, we are definitely your first stop that you should be making to come and figure out if that's going to work out. We have lots of student opportunities that are going to be available for you guys, and they're also going to be available primarily online. So that's going to make it so that you guys will be able to access them better. So we have one thing called the Collaboratory, which is meshing our social innovation, our research department, and the Entrepreneurship Center to make fun things like I-co-ops and e-co-ops so that you guys can build your own businesses and work with us to help us sort of grow our own stuff. And then we have the VR hack, which is the shirt that I'm wearing right now. I'm really excited about this. So we had it planned for last year, I suppose, I guess in January. And then since everything got messed up, we will be changing that to later on next January, March time. So hopefully we'll be able to gather in a group. If not, we'll figure out a way to do it online because it is virtual reality. So we should be able to figure something out. We have a couple of really awesome business things that we do, which is Accelerate Summit and Accelerate Her. Accelerate Summit is more so directed towards people who already have businesses, and it's basically a great training sessions on a whole bunch of different fun things to learn. And then Accelerate Her is sort of our Accelerate for businesses, but for female-oriented businesses that we've been trying to help get off the ground. And then, of course, we have at the bottom there Further Faster, which is a fantastic thing that you will take for when you take an e-co-op. If you're taking your e-co-op, you're going to be taking Further Faster. So Further Faster is going to take you through the A to Z of how to start and run your business. And if you make money, that's great. If you don't, that's still okay. That's not how we measure success. When it comes to your e-co-op, we measure success when it comes to your e-co-op with how much you actually got done and how far your business is along, because most people don't make money yet, but we have had students who have come out of this with fantastic jobs. And if you have any more questions about that, the e-co-op or the I-co-op, you can talk to Jenna Green, or you can email me and I will send you the information. So we have a cool story. One of our students, he was an e-co-op student. Chat, there it is. There we go, Jenna's popped up there, perfect. The cool story is by Elite Programmers. So this is Ken. He is fantastic. He used to come to the Makerspace all the time. He went through the Georgian and Laurentian, Georgian Lakehead program for computer studies. And right now he has his own business where he's taking on other members into his crew. And he's going to be teaching virtually. He's sharing expertise. He's got potential to grow larger and hire students like you guys to help teach students as well. So right now he's doing a really great job because there's so many people needing stuff for their kids to do, and that's right up his alley. So he helps, actually our director, she sends her kids to him, and he's fantastic and he's very passionate about what he does. And he actually teaches our Unity nights when we have Unity nights, normally at the college, but we'll see if we can't get one of those on here as well, especially when we get closer to the VR hack. All right, so does everybody have their IDEs open? You can either wave your hands or type into the chat. Yeah, I see the little thumbs up. That's perfect. I'm just going to quickly move this cat that I have on me. Sorry about that. It occurred to me that I was not going to be able to use both of my hands to type if the cat was sitting on my entire arm. All right, so we are going to be doing, thank you, she is adorable. She is a purebred Siamese. She bites me most of the time, let's be realistic. So we have CSS Grid and Flexbox today. So one of the students had mentioned the other day that they wanted to learn more about CSS Grid and Flexbox, and hopefully we can get through both items today. We're going to start with Flexbox, and then we're going to move on to CSS Grid after that. My goal is to also take a look at codepen.io, if possible. If not, I'm going to save that just to the end so that we can try and get through both the grid and the Flexbox. Sounds good? So I will take these links here that I just walked past, and I'm going to post those into the chat just in case you guys would like to get some different fonts or different emojis that we're going to be using. Just going to pop this back up into there. So that's Emojipedia. So we're in the grid one. When we do the grid after Flex, we are going to be using some emojis in there. So if you guys just want to change up the emojis that are going to be in the files that you received, you can definitely go to emojipedia.org and just copy and paste some different emojis in there. That's entirely up to you. And then also the next one is just 15 funny lorem ipsum generators. So also in the grid, we are going to be using some text spacing so that you can see what it actually looks like when you put text into it. So if you wanted like your own fun, I'm going to be using a Doctor Who one because I have been currently obsessed with Doctor Who. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. Before we start, this is where I'm going to make sure you guys have your IDEs ready and that you have the packages downloaded from Jenna. You might have just received them because I believe she forgot to do them and then sent them out in a separate email. So if you do not have them, just go check your email and we'll get those opened up. So as from the last couple weeks, we have some Makerspace rules, which are be kind. Use the chat for questions. Doesn't matter what kind of questions they are. I can usually figure stuff out. Learn something new. That's our goal tonight. We're going to have fun and we're going to meet new people. And maybe they might not be new. Maybe they're people who are in your class already or in your course already. But maybe you'll find out something new about them, like they're really good at working with CSS Flex or something. So today I chose ugly butterfly things. And what we had before, Flexbox, wasn't enough. We had tables and we had floats and they had serious limitations. You could use tables to build out an entire like grid system and things that were going to work. And then once things started getting updated or downgraded, the tables and floats started to get really difficult to use. And depending on what size your browser was, they're really not built for responsive design. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at today, which is going to be some responsive design. So you're probably like, hey, Virginia, how does Flexbox work? It is used for one-dimensional layouts. So that's either going by the row or going by the column, which you'll see in the next two diagrams that I have to pop up. You can set your alignment. So you can align a group of items or you can line them top to bottom. There's a bunch of different ways that we're going to explore to see how we can put our boxes into certain alignments. And of course, you can change it for different views so things align differently on different screens. So if you have like cell phone screen or if you have another screen, and that portion is sort of where codepen.io comes in really handy, because when you use it, you can actually take a look at what your website would look like on a device. And that's a super helpful thing to be able to do. So we will jump right into this, and we're going to talk about flex direction row, which is the default, flex direction row reverse, which, as you can see here, it just reverses the row. And then we have the exact same thing for column and column reverse. So these are the first two things that we are going to get started with. We're going to use these. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the CSS Flexbox project into your chosen IDE or into Atom. I like to use Atom, as you know. And if I minimize this, we should almost have that. Flexbox students, perfect. Okay, so if you guys have this open, you will see that you have an index, which already includes some important things. We have some items in here, which are encapsulated inside of a div. We have our style sheet already linked. Yes. So Jenna sent a second email that has so Jenna has a second email that has the files in it. There should be two links there. Ta-da! All right, these are the joys of Zoom calls instead of being all together in one group. If you guys were all stuck with me in a room, I'd have jump drives, tens and thousands of jump drives with all the files on it, because no one can trust emails. Okay, so I believe everyone should have it now. We'd have jump drive mania. Exactly, exactly. All right, just gonna open that chat back up over here. Perfect. Okay. So I'm just gonna talk about what's in the file while you guys open them. Hopefully you guys have them open and or are getting to having them opened. So as I was mentioning, we have a few important things in our index. So one of the main things is this guy right here, viewport, width equals device, dash width, initial scale, 1 to 5. So important, perfect, Sherry. Double check you're sending to Kevin. But Kevin, I can immediately forward this email to you though. Okay, Kevin, I sent it to you from my email. I wish it did. I know I was sitting here being like, can't I just move these files in here? But it does not have a drag and drop. Perfect. Kevin's got it. We're on the road. This is excellent. So very exciting. So then we have our text right here. We also have making it compatible. Internet Explorer is Edge now. Then we have one of the most important things, which is linking our style sheet. So instead of doing inline styles, we are going to have our own style sheet. So when we open up the style sheet, which we'll take a look at, I'm just showing it to you for now. The chat didn't pop up. Sorry guys, the chat just disappeared on me. There it is right there. Okay. Yeah, so that's Internet Explorer equals Edge. So because Internet Explorer is being phased out. Yeah. So we're working with Flexbox first, so it's the Flexbox student file, which is what I have up over here in the corner. Perfect. Okay, so we have our body, and then we have our first div, which is class of container. So it finishes off down here. So we have basically a box, and then inside that box, we have a whole bunch of little items. Our items today are these happy little letters that we have. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna have some space around them, and we're gonna shift them around using Flexbox. In the style sheet, as you can see, I've already given it some styles. So if we go to our index.html and we go down to the, if you're using atom.io, you go down to the left-hand corner, you just click, and then we'll be able to, what we did last time is just paste it into our browser. So this is what you should see if you open your current Flexbox file. So you'll see a couple of boxes that have A, B, C, D, E, F, and then a large rectangular box, which is the container. And then the teal ones are the items that are in there. So it's sort of easily color coded, so you really can understand where the stuff is. So if we go back to, oops, that's the wrong one. This guy here. The first thing, as long as everybody's ready, that we're going to do is we're going to go to our style sheet. Because we've already given our divs some classes here, they are all ready for us to just start using them. So as you can see, the container already has two things going on. It has a background color of 333, which is just that gray, and then it's already displaying flex. So if we decide to get rid of this display flex and go back to our browser, you'll see what it looks like without the display of flex. Because the default is just to stretch everything, that's what we have going on here because nothing's been set. So once we put display flex in, that's where we can actually start moving our items around. So the first thing that we want is definitely to have this display flex property. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use one of those 4 things that we just learned about, which is flex direction. So that's our first goodness. So flex direction, and as you see, here are the 4 things that I had mentioned on those 2 slides. We have column, column reverse, row, and row reversed. So the default row, and save. We can go back to our Flexbox, and as you can see, we get that same automatic default to the left-hand side. Now, if we go back to Atom and we choose row reverse, so we save that as row reverse, and then we go back here. As you can see, it has completely basically mirrored what we had before. It's pushed it over to the right-hand side, and it's actually backwards from the way that it was. So it is completely reversed. So now it's FEDCBA instead of ABCDEF. Now the next one we're going to try is going to be column. So once we have column, we save it, we go back here, we're going to refresh, and as you can see, we have our columns. And as I said, the regular default for this is to have stretch, so it's just going to take our boxes and stretch them right across. It's less of a redo, yes. The last one here that we're going to do is obviously column reverse. So we save it with column reverse, and we're going to have the same thing that happened with the other ones, only it's just reversed it. Yeah, so we did row reverse, which did across the top there, and now we're doing column reverse, and that does it from bottom to top, top to bottom. Okay, so if we take a look at this right now, we're just going to switch it back to row for now because it's the most common. So we still want our flex direction to remain as row, which is a default. And when we refresh, so this is what we're going to get. The next thing we want to do is just see how this sort of works. And as you can see, our letter there is definitely getting chopped off. But to really see this in action, let's go to our index. We're going to copy all of these divs. And we're going to just paste them right below, or we're going to not copy at all. So what we've done here is we've just copied the same thing and placed it below so that once we save this, we have a lot more tiles to be able to see how our row is not wrapping. Like This is not great. There's the responsiveness to this is almost zero. So what we're looking for is to give this a little bit of change. We're going to go back to our style sheet, and we're going to use something new, which is called Flex Wrap. So Flex-Wrap, and it's going to be crazy, but are you ready for this? The property we're going to use here is wrap. So we save that as Flex Wrap. We go back to our CSS here, and there we go. So we've managed to do the first thing that everybody always wants to know how to do, which is make it so that your items actually stack on top of each other as you go. We're also going to find out how to grow and shrink these. And you can do a whole bunch with this, including making asides and articles and sections, all using Flex. But for now, we're just going to be using these cute little squares with the letters in them. Once we get to working with CSS Grid, which I prefer much more, as it is a dual access platform, or I guess use that we can do. So Grid works on both axes. When you're working with Flex, we're only working with one axis at a time. So we're only working on the row. We're only working on X, or we're only working on Y. Like we're only working on one of the two axes, not both. When we work with CSS Grid, that's when that changes. That's when we can work with both the axes. Axes? Anyways, we also have wrap.reverse. And if anybody can guess what that's probably going to do, before I refresh, what do you think is going to happen? It's like, Virginia, you're typing too quickly. Just wrap it backwards. Exactly. And that's exactly what it did. It wrapped it backwards so the things stack on top as opposed to stacking below. So we figured out wrap reverse. Let's go over my notes for a quick sec. Perfect. All right. So step 3, what we're going to be doing is combining the flex direction and flex wrap. So in one argument though. So we're going to do flex flow. So both of these guys, flex direction and flex wrap, can now go away because we have a better way of doing it. We can put both arguments into one basically feature. So it's going to be flex flow, takes 2 arguments. So we're going to use row, and we are going to use wrap. So what we did in 2 lines before, we have done in 1 line here. And if we go back to our CSS here, and we refresh that, as you can see, because we don't have wrap reverse on, it has switched back to what we had originally chosen, which is it is in rows, and it is wrapping, good job, and it is wrapping around the box. Okay, so the next things we're going to work on is flex start, end, and center, and justify content. And flex start means it'll put everything to the left, and flex end will put everything to the right, and then center will obviously center it. Then we will also have a few more things, which are space between, space around, and space evenly. So what we're going to do here is we're going to type in justify content. And we're going to start with, we'll start with center. We'll work our way through these just like this. So if we choose center and save that, we go back to our browser, not our files, browser. And we take a look at this, we refresh it. As you can see, all of our little guys are still wrapping, but instead they're wrapping to the center and not to the left or to the right. From Flex Center. So that would look really nice if you're making a grid for some photos, or if you just want everything to be centered down the page and you want to have like an in and out type thing. It's a great use of that. So we're going to use Flex End next. So as I mentioned, this is going to put everything to the right. Save that. So if we refresh this, everything has been pushed to the end of the axis. So it's at the very end of the row axis. But as you can see, everything still follows the wrap because we have our wrap on still. If we use Flex Start, it puts it the other direction. So it's kind of like what we did with the column reverse and row reverse, only this puts it to the end of the axis, and column and row reverse completely flip around the entire box of items. So if we go back to Flex End for a second. So if we're back at Flex End, as you can see, it's still A, B, C, D, E, F, A, B, C, D, E, F. It's just at the end of that. Unlike when we had our column reverse running, that flipped everything around, and the row reverse flipped everything around backwards. We'll go for one of the last ones here, so justify contact. The next one that we want to look at is going to be space around. So space around equalizes the space around each item, including the edges. So it's going to make the space equalized in between the items, but not change the size of the items themselves. Refresh that. So as you can see, the space between all of the items has been equalized. And as I grow it, and one flips up, they all still get the same equal space, no matter how wide I do it. And once I start shrinking it, it does the same thing. The next one that we're going to use is space between. And space between is, it's going to equalize the space between the items, so not the rest of it. They're kind of the same, but you'll see, once you see it up, you'll see the difference, because one of them is actually dealing with the space on the outsides of them as well as dealing with the space in between them. The space between is just dealing with that space between, not the stuff on the outside as well. So it's not making sure the left side and the right side have equal space. I mean, it's going to be equal, but it's not going to be equal to what's at the top, what's the rest of them have. So as you can see, the space between, it has an equal space between in the center there. Once we keep moving it, as you can see, it's still equal space, but it's not equal space. If you look at that bottom row, you can tell that it's not equal space along your margins or your padding, is whatever you want to call it. The outside portion. It's all one distinct size. But you do get the space between C and D is the exact same. And then the space between A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, those are all the same sizes. And it'll continue like that. And as you can see, still wrapping. Okay, so am I going too fast for anybody, or is this an okay speed? Oh, sorry, I missed your stack on top there. Sherry, which one was it that you wanted to see? Wrap reverse? Yeah, so it's, we'll just add it here. Okay, so we're adding wrap reverse to this. So they're all in the right direction, except for when you start moving it around, it completely changes them. And space between is on. So if we change this to, say, center. Yeah, I get disconnected on it too, because I'm like, okay, but I thought if it was reversed, then it would be like this. But because we're using the wrap and the row, and we're also using justify content now, it's changed how it works. Yeah, so depending on the size that you make your, what do you call this? Oh my goodness, I'm so tired. That you make your browser, it will change what letters stay up at the top and which ones go down to the bottom. And now E is first after the, yes, it should be, yeah, so. So it's sort of, it's going from your right-hand side, so F, E, D, C, B, A, F, E, D, C, B, A. So it's sort of going backwards that way. Okay, so. Set to row reverse, I know. Oh, it's not. Now it truly is. So there you go. So F is at the beginning. Because I was using wrap reverse, not row reverse. So row reverse completely reverses the rows. Wrap reverse just reverses the way it gets wrapped. So like down to up instead of up to down. All right, so our next thing that we're going to try is going to be align content. So as you see with align content, just like we had for justify content, we get center, flex end, flex start, space around, space between, and stretch. Stretch is the default. So that is what it's going to be. So down to up instead of up to down is reversing. Yeah, wrap reverse. So that would be wrap dash reverse. We're just going to keep it as wrap and row for now. Okay, so step 5. Okay. Okay, so another thing that we want to look at here is going to be baseline. And baseline works really, really cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our index and we're going to get rid of this right here because we don't need it. And inside of the two divs where we have our letters, we're going to do something where we just add some, just a line. We're just going to add some lines here. You can put them wherever you like in here, but what we want to see is that it will line up the baseline, and the baseline is the bottom of the text. So it's going to line everything up at the text. We're just gonna get rid of align content right now because I don't want to do baseline. And we are also going to, I'm just looking for my step 5 here. Sorry, guys. There it is. Oh, no, I was right. We're keeping that. We're going to go right to align content. So we're going to do align content because you can align your content all the same ways that we just aligned them with justify content, only a little bit different. And we can, as I mentioned, add that baseline. See if that works. And it is solidly right here. That would be the baseline of all of our font. And then we can also I just want to add some extra so that I want to add some extra space so that you guys can see. Okay, so what we're going to do over here as well is let's in the A section, we are going to add an inline style, I believe. No, we're not, because that's not how we roll. I'm going to do item C. Come back to the bottom down here. We're going to give item C a height of 300 pixels. And you're probably like, but hey, Virginia, now everything's 300 pixels. That doesn't make any sense. So we're going to take item C. I'm just going to copy that, and we'll put this to item F. Let's do item F, and instead of 300 pixels, let's make that 800 pixels. So when we refresh this, as you can see, item C has been given 300 pixels, and it has stopped. And the rest of them have kept growing because, as I had mentioned earlier, the default for Flexbox is stretch. So it's going to continue to stretch them unless we turn that off or choose to use something like space around or justify content. Moved everything to the center for now, and if we slide around, it still all moves. But as you can see, so anything that is left on that next row has changed, and it takes the item F default height. And if we move it over and over, then all of them take it once they're all on the same row. You slide it over again, we can see that this entire row up here, now that that's the only row that's there, it's taking the height of the 300 pixels because of the default stretch. I think that if we come down here, yeah, text line center. So if we have a couple different heights, as you can see, it does change. Checking the thing here. For some reason, you're not seeing my screen. Oh, okay. Well, I can always stop the share. I'll stop the share for a second and then I'll share it back up in a sec. This is the most 90s thing I can say, but can you see me now? Okay, so every time I minimize the screen, the chat disappears. Yes, if you sometimes clicking the speaker view will help. I usually just start clicking buttons at the top and see if that fixes it. I've never lost a screen though, like a shared screen. So Kevin, you asked about item F and item C. So item C, as you can see here, has been given a height of 300 pixels, and item F has been given a height of 800. So if anybody needs to take a bio break, we can take a bio break so that we can get everybody rejoined. And I can just keep talking about this awesome Flexbox here. So how this is working is once the screen is small enough, as you can see, as you should be able to see this, it'll take the 300 pixel stretch and stretch all of those up until the 800 pixel comes up. Okay, Sherry, we'll see you in a second. So it squishes and then goes super big. And as you can see, these guys just keep going down. You just play around with some things. Justify content, use. So since we already use space around, space around, excellent, double the space. So as you can see, that is equalizing the space between each of the little blocks there. Okay, so they all flow that way because the default for Flex is stretch. Like that's the default value for it is that it will stretch. I have a note in here on how to make that go away. Yes, the more specific the CSS, the more priority it has. But it's not necessarily priority. Like the only one that's getting priority right now is C. That's the only one that has C. It's saying this is how big I am. And all of you other guys could be any size except for item F. Item F size is 800 pix. And because that stretches all the way down, all of the other bars that don't have their own sizes are going to stretch as well. if you want, we can do a stop share for a second, and I'll just go to my code pen here. Okay, so apparently I don't have my code pen signed in down here. That's great. Ooh, what did I sign in? Sorry to have had so many hiccups today, guys. This is a weird hiccupy night. Yes, so they're inheriting the height only because they don't have their own specific heights. Yep, I'll start my screen share again. And I've lost the chat. Here we go. Okay, so give it a few seconds. And the screen should pop up. There we go, that's better. Tech, exactly, tech. We had two really good maker knives with no hiccups in them, so this had to happen eventually. So we've aligned the content, we've justified the content. What we're gonna do with aligned content is we're gonna play around with some of these guys. We're gonna get rid of justify there. We're gonna shrink this back down so you guys can see both. So as you can see, the space around, it still shrinks, but it's instead of centered or growing with it because it's just space around, it'll just shrink once it gets small enough. Content and center it. Then it's centered. And we have the equal space around it. And then we can also do space between. We can change this to column, just so that we can see it in a different way. So because we have one column, everybody, these guys are just the sizes that they are to fill the space that they have a header bar, and they also have the E. And then same with the B, but as you can see here, C is still set to 300 pixels, so it automatically gets that. And then F down here has the exact same thing happening. So instead of being the size that it would be, which would be that one of those small squares like D, it has its own height, which is 800 pixels. If we get rid of these two guys here, this should potentially work. This is what our columns would look like otherwise. So they just fill the entire space. If they don't have any justification or aligning properties to them, they'll just fill the entire space. Right. So the next things that we're going to learn about are going to be flex grow and flex shrink. So we're going to start off by giving our, just make sure display. I'm just going to turn flex, we're turning flex flow off. And we're going to give it a height of 700 pixels. It's not the most beautiful way to put it in there, but it's there. And then we refresh. So as you can see, we've given the box, our container, the size of and the height of 700 pixels. And as you notice, item F is 800 pixels. So if it is larger than our box, it will extend outside of the box. It will go 100 pixels out. And then C, still its happy little self being here this size. We're just going to go back to this index and get rid of these HRs because we don't need them anymore. That was just to show that everything, if you use baseline, everything aligns at the same center of the text. Sorry, baseline of the text. So at the very bottom of that text, it'll match that. Okay, so we got step 8. Just need my second file out here. Perfect. Okay, so we are going to go down here to item C and item F. And instead of it having a pixel amount for height, we're going to get rid of the height altogether. We're going to save that. And once we save that, we'll just check our boxes here and make sure, yep, okay, so they stretch the entire way through our 700 pixel with a margin and some padding, which is what we have around our items here. So the first thing that we're going to use is Flex Grow. And this takes a numerical value. So we can say a 2 here. And then we're also going to use Flex Grow on item F. And I just copied and pasted that down because why not? We'll just save that. And then we are going to add into our item. So specifically speaking to each of the items that are on the inside the container, we're going to use something called Flex Basis. And we'll set that to, I guess, 140 pixels, 104 pixels it is. Oh, I skipped a step. I'm sorry, guys. Just ignore this. Just ignore Flex Basis for now. We're just going to get rid of that. We don't need it yet. We want to see Flex Grow and Flex Shrink happen, and then I'm going to show you how you can use both of them in one line using Flex Basis. Keep getting ahead of myself today. So as you can see, the only thing that changed there is that item C and item F got a teensy tiny bit wider. You can also put that as a 3. Still just a teensy tiny bit wider, but as you grow it, you can see that those 2 items are the ones that are allowed to grow. And the other items, because they're not accessed, they're not in use. But if we want all of the items to do something like that, before we see that, we're going to use Flex Shrink. We'll just set this to a 1. Fresh. And you see we're just back to our normal because the Flex Shrink isn't going to work on these items right now. But what will work on these items is using Flex Basis. So Flex Basis will take in a number. So as we decided earlier, that was 104 pixels. And then we have the main thing, which is going to be Flex. Just Flex. Okay. I'm not sure why, Kevin. I'd have to see your code. Did you want to share your page or do you want to keep going? Okay, we can look at it later. I think you guys will like CSS Grid more. I certainly do, and I'll show you what we're going to make in a second because I enjoy it. It's more responsive and it works better. So with this one, they're going to grow and they're going to shrink to what they're allowed to be because it's on auto. These guys right here are no longer the ones that are given the telling it what to do. Now what's telling it what to do is this right here. And we can change these up. I think that's one I'm allowed to change. It might be the other one to change. Yes. Apparently it's all the same. Anyways, that is Flexbox, the flexiness. I can't get into my code pen, which I was trying to do while you were gone there, Sherry. But I vote that we've learned how to change some shapes. Let's move on to, because it is 4:41 and I'd really like to do CSS Grid. Is that good with everyone? We can switch to doing CSS Grid now. I know, but I have my pen saved on my code pen. That's my problem. I just wanted to show you what I did with it. And for the life of me, whatever is logged in upstairs has completely different logins than downstairs. And I need keychains for all those passwords. Keychain mania, that's exactly it. Okay, so CSS Grid is really cool, and I'm going to show you the difficult long way to get there first, and then I'm also going to show you the not so difficult, really easy, super duper easy way to use Grid, which I found out after going through a whole bunch of stuff. So how does CSS Grid work? It's used for two-dimensional layouts, so X and Y, using both the row and the column. So you're not stuck to like making sure like all of your stuff in one line and then having to do a separate Flexbox container for the other stuff. You can actually move stuff around in one container. It's really neat. I'd say it is the easiest way to make responsive grid-like designs. So as I had mentioned earlier, this is just sort of a little showing of what I meant. The turquoise items, the light blue and the green, and then with CSS Grid, you can choose to move those items wherever you like. And you can choose how big they are. So if at the very beginning of this, there was a nice little layout, and we'll take a look at a layout like that in a second. Let's try it out. Oh, these bugs are just so great. Okay, so we're gonna close this guy and open this guy over here. Okay, so if you guys did you make a grid with the dots in the green caliper? No, I didn't. No, it comes with a whole bunch of different like styles to put on the caterpillars. When I make my things, as you can see, I use Canva. And if you have Canva Pro, it gives you, there are so many options. There's a whole bunch of free stuff that you can use as well because it's a great option for making presentations. You can make Instagram stuff, you can make Facebook stuff. It has all the correct sizing for you so that you don't have to really worry about how many pixels was my Instagram post supposed to be. It actually just has it pre-made. And you can just use a whole bunch of different like slide presentations. So I usually pick one of these and start working with it and then change it up. Okay, so if we all open up our style sheets and our index for the CSS grid students. So what we have right now, I will show you what it looks like. Yeah, so you can put emojis in the code. This is something that I found out that I was just like super cool. So if you scroll up through the chat, like all the way up to the top, there's a little blurb where I show you that if you guys want to change what emojis you're using and make them your own, go nuts and go to that emojipedia.org. And then if you want different text, I'll just post it again down here. And if you want different text for yourself, you can use the lorem ipsum generators that I found on there. They're pretty funny. There's a whole bunch of different ones. I'm going to use the Doctor Who one today. So we're going to start with this looking like that. And then hopefully what we will end up with, if I'm grabbing the right thing, I hope I am, is something that looks a little bit more like this. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different sizes. There's emojis. I've added some cat pictures in here. You can put whatever pictures you want, but cat pictures is what I have. Many, many cat pictures. And yeah, so this is basically a really simple way to lay out a website. The line looks so simple. But as you can see, everything grows and changes and resizes. Even the header up at the top, it does have some, like, it only gets so small for the main things, but that's because of the size of what I put things as. Anyways, cats are just like your intro to JavaScript teacher. Is your intro to JavaScript teacher, is her name Jess? Because we really like cats. She's fantastic. She was my teacher for PHP. So we're going to take this right here, what we see here, and we're going to turn that into something more like this. And you guys can change whatever colors you like. These are just like my sort of color zones. And then I believe we also have a second one that is like, yeah, this one's like the halfway through. What we'll end up with at the end of this one. So this is where we're going to end up before we get to that next level. We'll do this. We'll just get them into a nice happy little grid. And then once we get them into a nice happy little grid, that's where we're going to start moving things around. And I'm going to show you this way, which you can do individually, accessing each thing, or you can do it all in one block. So it's really exciting. Okay, so we're going to close these guys because I'm just going to get confused. I'm going to come to this HTML. I'm going to go to my right CSS. Okay. Okay, so this is our index. As you saw, we have a bunch of emojis in here with numbers. And then on our style sheet, we already have a whole bunch of information in here. And that's just to get things to line up and make it a lot easier so we don't have to spend a lot of time styling stuff. It's already done, so we can work on the neat stuff. What we have access, though, is the body. So that's giving us our background and our font color. We have a header, which is here. It's got padding, it's centered, it's white. That's the color of the text, and it's 60 pixels. Then I have something down here that says font size. So .font, if you look in your index, I have a class in here called font. You're like, Virginia, it already has an ID. Why would you need that? Well, the class font is on all of the P tags. Because if you're using font and you're using emojis, emojis are considered a font. So in our CSS, if we didn't give the font its own size, it would be the exact same size as the text. So the regular font size of 40 pixels. So without this, as you can see, the numbers are bigger. They're about the same size as each of the emojis, but with it, we shrink that text so that we can have a specifically sized text and still use the emojis with it, because I thought it would be cool if we could swing in some emojis, because why not? And I don't know if your emojis look the same as mine, because I think they look different on different browsers. Okay, let's get started. So for step 1, we're going to come down here. We're going to go to this beginning of the grid setup. This, if you guys want to do me a favor, yes, emojis are font. And I just want you to get rid of that bracket down at the very bottom, because that's going to mess us up. It wasn't supposed to be in there. So at the beginning of our grid setup, we are going to access the container first. And we're going to give our container the display, whoops, with our happy mustaches. And we're going to give it the display of grid. Just like when we wanted to give it a display of flex, we gave it a display of flex. We'll give it a display of grid. And just by giving it a display of grid, does that do anything for us? No, not yet. So what we're going to do next is we are going to use something called display. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You're right. You know, it's still not supposed to do anything because we haven't told it what it's going to have yet. So what we're going to give it in step 1 is we're going to use something called grid template columns and grid template rows. We're going to work with something that's called a fraction. So instead of using percentages or pixels, which we will use later on, we're going to use something called a fraction first. So we're going to use grid template columns. And I like to do this. So grid template columns. And I'm going to say that we want, let's say 3 rows. We got 9 items there. So we'll use 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. So each one of these FR sounds for one fraction of the container. And if we have 3 of those, they're going to share the space equally between each other. So we're going to save that. We go back to our grid here, refresh, and there we go. So we have all our 9 items all lined up. And if we squish, they squish. We squish, they don't squish that way. So what we did there was we just added grid template columns, 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. So that's 1 fraction, 1 fraction, 1 fraction. What we can do is we could give this guy 2 fractions if we want to. And once we change that, as you can see, it's been given a little bit more. And to show you truly, I'm just going to open up the inspector here. So this is what you can see now. So we have our 1 item that's in the middle that is 2 fractions wide. And this is 1 fraction and 1 fraction. So it basically starts with the biggest and says, okay, I need 2 fractions worth of space. And then you other 2 fractions are going to get what's left over. And you're going to split that between the 2 of you. So we can do the exact same thing because we're allowed to work with both columns and rows in this. We're going to use grid template rows. Just all the way at the bottom there. Okay, Kevin. So with grid template rows, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to use the fractions. Or let's make that last one 3 fractions. So we've got grid template rows, 1 fraction, 1 fraction, 3 fractions. We'll come back over here. And as you can see, that last fraction, that last section here at the very bottom has a whole bunch of space. And so if we change that to being this guy can be the 1. And then we refresh. Now it's this middle one that has all the extra space. You guys get that? I'm going to show you something that is in step 3, but I think it'll make it a lot easier for you guys to see how this is truly working. We're going to use something that's called grid gap. So there's 2 ways that you can use grid gap. You can either call it grid-gap and then put that, and maybe we want it to be 16 pixels by 24 pixels. And if I choose to do it this way, this is going to give us 16 pixels for rows, between rows, and 24 pixels between columns. I think that's the way it is. It might be the other way around. But if we go here, we refresh. So this gives us pixels between. So now we can truly see what our containers look like, what our little item containers look like inside of our larger container. This is the first step to separating and adding pictures in and doing everything like that. That gap, when we used to do it with tables and floats, you'd have to add padding and margins and try to fit everything in. And it was one of the most stressful things because you'd move one thing to the left and that would push a whole article all the way down and over to the side. And then you'd have to, minus your padding. And it was a crazy time. Having grid is exciting and fantastic. Here you go, Kevin. I'm just going to paste this into the chat there so you can just copy and paste. Okay. Oops. That. Okay, so we've got that. We've got the grid gap, which I really, really like. Instead of doing grid gap, well, let's do it this way. The first thing we can do with grid gap is make it so all of them are equally 16 pixels all the way around. Like that. So equal between every single grid is 16 pixels. If we wanted to do it a little bit differently, which we do, because we always want to know how to do it at all the ways we can give it a specific row gap. We can give it a specific column gap. So we can give them specific gaps instead of using the grid gap, which is basically the same idea as flex flow, where you get to take 2 arguments and put them into one thing. I love doing that. Not everybody knows how they work, like whether it's row or column or row, but you can always figure that out just by making a change and seeing how it works. So we've changed this row to having 30 pixels, and then between the columns, it's 20 pixels. So you can make those changes and you can make those decisions if you're building out a nice website and you want everything to be, equally spaced. You can choose to use grid gap instead. And you don't even have to type the whole thing out because they made it extra easy. You can just use the word gap. So a gap at 25 pixels, we refresh that, and boom, we have a gap of 25 pixels for both the columns and the rows. So if you don't want them to be different than each other, you can just do one number for both. If you want them to be different, you can put 2 numbers into that gap category, or you can do them specifically row gap and column gap. We can also use something called a repeat function. For the grid template columns and whatnot. So we're going to get rid of all these numbers. And we're going to use something called repeat, which is going to take 2 values, how many we want, and how much space they're allowed to take up. I'm just going to get rid of grid template rows for now. So if we go back to our grid here, and we refresh, as you can see, we have 4 columns, each taking up 1 fraction and spread out equally across. So as you can see with this, this isn't going to move one up and replace another one because we're not wrapping anything. Another fun thing that you can do is use something that's just called grid template. So when you're using grid template, you can put both of the values for the rows and for the columns into one function there. So we do the exact same thing that we did with the other ones. We're like, 1 fraction, how about 30 pixels, about 20%, because this can take all of those different types of values. It will take percentages, it will take pixels, and it will take fractions, and it'll say, okay, this column needs to be 30 pixels. So it's going to take that and be like, okay, 30 pixels. And then it's like, all right, the next one needs to take up 20% of that space. And the next one of that needs to be 1 fraction that's left of that space. And then we're going to do the columns and the rows as well. So let's say for fractions, 200 pixels and 1 fraction there. So this is using our rows and our columns at the same time, just using grid template, as opposed to using grid template columns and grid template rows. You can put them both in one line. They really thought about coders and people who work with this when they made this. So as you can see, things have been pushed out of into the wrong spots, and they're not quite making it into their areas. But we do get the shrinking and the growing with the 4 fractions there. So 30 pixels is obviously not enough because our images are like 20, so it's not going to work. And as you make your changes and you scroll around, you can see obviously 20% is not going to work for that. Maybe we'll change it to 40% and save it. But that's just, you know, a designer's dream of just going through each thing and making sure that things are going to size properly and that they're going to sit properly. But it does allow you to have, let's say, maybe this row right here, the lion, the ladybug, and the zebra, maybe those are all photos. And then maybe the tiger, the penguin, and the elephant is a block of text. So that as you grow and shrink it, it's going to grow and shrink here. Okay, next, we did grid gap, grid template column, check. Okay, so the final one that we're gonna do is done. It's so exciting. Now we get to do the really, really exciting one, which is working on that next one. If I just have to grab my index, my secondary index out of here, and there we go, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna make this one. So this is where you guys will need to go into, this is what we're gonna make. So if you guys want some words, text like that I have here, go onto a lorem ipsum generator that I put in the chat earlier. It's super easy. They're all easy to use. Or if you want, just run your hands across the keyboard a few times. But before we do that, we're gonna make sure that your index is actually set up properly. So we're gonna come over here and we're gonna get rid of those numbers that we were originally using inside the p tags, because numbers aren't what we're doing. We're gonna put text in here instead. So I'm obviously going to copy and paste the text that I have from my other file here, just into these spaces. Just like that. And if you like, you can separate each one of these just to make it easier for you to see. And I'm gonna do that for you guys because it makes it easier for me to see as well. So we're just gonna fill in these p tags. So I don't care if you decide to fill in these p tags with a menagerie of crazy nonsense. This is an excellent sentence and I feel very accomplished. So feel free to fill those in. I'm just gonna leave that one like that for now. But yeah, so start doing some copying and pasting. And we're gonna fill up these p tags. And if you guys can raise your hands in the chat or let me know in the chat that you have it done, then we'll be able to move on to the next one. So fill in your p tags. That's exactly what they do when they play piano. Exactly. Those are the exact notes. One may not know that there were that many notes in a, oh, this is good, on a piano, but it doesn't just stop at C. We got some fun stuff going on here. Doo, doo, doo. Did I mention we have CSS? And then this one down here, I'm just going to do the exact same thing. Excellent. And they feel accomplished doing that because it's fantastic. We have a very awesome out of tune piano here, one of those big stand-up guys. It is a glorious time when it comes Christmas time and everyone is just hammering on those guys. So we've put a whole bunch of stuff into our index, which is fantastic. We're gonna just take a look at all that junk after we make sure we grab the right one. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. Obviously, it just has the styles that we had used earlier, which we're about to change because this is not the best. We're losing some emojis here. He's falling out of his grid. Good thing he's a ladybug and he can fly. That was the zebra. We'd have a problem. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to our style sheet. We're going to start making some changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all of, no, actually, we're just going to get rid of this grid template. So we're going to lay out our own items. We're going to lay them out how we want them, where we want them, how much space we want them to take up. We're going to make those decisions. So we have display grid, which is we're going to be displaying grid. We have the gap, which tells us how much space is going to be in between each of our items. And then the next thing, the thing that I get really excited about, is something called grid template areas. So that's the next one that we're going to use. Grid template areas. And what we're going to do is we're just going to hit enter, and we're going to build ourselves a grid. So if you look in your index, you'll notice that every single one of these has an ID. We're going to take those IDs and we're going to bring them into our grid template areas, and we're going to tell it where things are going to go. So if we want it to look just like the one that we did, we're going to start with some quotes. Inside those quotes, we're going to call on each of the IDs of each of the items that we want. So I want elephant. You know what? I want elephant, elephant, elephant. That right there. And then we're going to do another, we'll do another line before we open it back up again. We're going to say like tiger, lion, frog. So prior to this, all of the items were just being read from the HTML, and they knew exactly where they were because they were in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. They were in an order that's already there. So when we go back to our grid here and we refresh, as you can see, they've moved, and the elephant has not. The elephant isn't on the right thing? No, it should be on the right thing. Oh, okay. I did that thing again where I forget to do the next part. So we need to assign each of the items that are going to be placed in our grid. So we're going to call on those tags. So we need the tiger tag. So hashtag tiger. And then we're going to type in something called grid area. It's going to tell you where it's going to go in our template. And then we're going to say, hey, we want our name of it is called tiger. There we go. That's all we need to do. We don't even need to add an end to it. That's it. So we need one of these for each one of our animals, because if we just have the tiger in here and we save it, I think we used tiger up there. Yes, we did. Perfect. We refresh. As you can see, the tiger's not here, but he is down here, and he is sitting exactly where he's supposed to be. He's the only one who's sitting in the right spot because he has been told that he's going to be sitting on the second line, first thing. If we also, we'll just copy this because everything's going to be the same except the titles. Paste. And we'll put in elephant. We save that. And then we go back to our grid. As you can see, now the elephant expands across the whole top section because we have three columns. The tiger is sitting in the right spot. It does go lion, frog, but that's only because the lion and the frog were next along the line. So we can keep changing things up here. So we need to make sure that we have the lion, the frog, lion, frog, and we'll need a ladybug and a zebra and a T-Rex and an owl and a penguin. So we'll start filling these guys all out. If anyone thinks that I'm going too fast, I will copy and paste this in here afterwards. Actually, I'll just do that right now. see if it fits. If it doesn't fit, then I'll do it pieces at a time. Owl. Okay, there you guys go. So the next thing to do is just to fill out the rest of the columns that we want to have, the columns and the rows and what we want in them. So I liked having that penguin expand over 2 spaces. So I will put penguin. Line, it is. Everyone get that? The index ID on the HTML for the lion is currently loin, which will make a difference. So penguin, ladybug, loin, I know. All right, and then we're gonna do owl, T-Rex. Let's do ladybug again, because that means we'll have it dropping downwards as well. Ladybug, and then at the bottom, we're just gonna do zebra, zebra, zebra. Be a nice ending. And to finish this, we are going to end it with a semicolon there. And once we hit save, I will come back to this if we need it. And we look at our little thing here, and we refresh. So what we have is a bunch of different things. They're different sizes, but maybe they don't all make a whole lot of sense. Like this one right here, the frog, has a whole lot of text in it. Maybe it should actually be where the penguin is. That's fine, we can do that. All we need to do over here is just frog, penguin, Control S. And then if we switch these, as you can see now, the ones that have small amounts of text are all here. And we've got our frog that has a whole large plop there. And then we got the sorry checking in on the water, this area. There's an escaped. There's more to that. But yeah, so I really like this way of using grid. I find it really easy to use and it's relatively responsive. You can grow and shrink. You can also add images into this. So if you want an image, let's say we'll put an image with this ladybug over here. Oh no. Okay, so what I'm gonna get you guys to do, because in your files that I sent you, apparently you don't have an image file. We're gonna click on this main top file and then right click and we're gonna make a new file, a new folder. And in that folder, we're just gonna call it images, IMG. And then inside that image folder, we are going to put some images. We put images of whatever. What should we put in there? Should we put a real life ladybug? Ladybug. Oh, I like this. That's cute. So pick an image, save it. I'm just saving mine to my desktop for now because I am going to eventually put it in this image file, which I should have just done right there. So as you can see, my image folder is here. I'm just going to save that. So I've saved it directly into my image folder. And now I have this fantastic, terribly named JPEG, which I'm going to rename as lb.jpg. So I've renamed the image that we're going to insert to LB JPEG. You can label it whatever you like. And then I'm just going to put that into our index underneath the ladybug here, inside the same div, just after the p tag. So we are going to use the image tag img src equals. So the image source is going to be, if you've ever written an image into it before, it's going to be your folder name, img, / whatever you named your JPEG or your PNG. So lb.jpg. Normally you'd put in an alt as well. So your alt right now, you'll want to do that for the ladybug, not the penguin. That would make a whole bunch of sense, wouldn't it? I was just keeping you guys on your toe. One toe, not all toes, just one toe. So give it to the ladybug. Just one toe, keeping you on your one toe. Okay, so we'll save that. And we'll go back here. Refresh. We have a ladybug. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it ahead of Control C. I'm going to put it in front of the P tag. Now we have two. So we've got the one that I didn't take out. Let's back over here. And we'll just get rid of that one. Okay, there we go. We've built a grid that has pictures in it. A picture for now, but we can add more pictures or we can do whatever. You've picked a pretty big picture. Does it fit? Does it change the size of all the other stuff around it? Because you can always, if your image is too big, you can give your images using CSS a height and a size. Just going to give it a image. I'm going to give our image a class of LB. So if we give it a class of LB, I can now access that class in here and just say dot LB. This should work. Has potential height 20 px. Yeah, so you can change the size of your picture just by giving your picture a class. So this is the image right here. You guys are looking at this. Image lb.jpg, that's the name of it. It has a class of LB. And then I have gone into the style sheet, access that class, and give it in a specific size. So if we change that up, 200 pixels instead of 20 pixels, it gets larger. Does anybody want to show off what they did? Or should we change some more colors, change some styling? Because since we have all of these IDs accessed, we can give them specific colors and specific changes that we want to make. So if we want to make, let's say on the penguin, let's make the background color. Ooh, I don't know what color this is, but this is what we're using. Evil. And we're going to give it a height of exactly 300 pixels. So just in case what we had already decided, you probably put your class tag in the wrong spot. Do you want to share your screen? So there's our penguin. Oh, 666 is gray. I'm glad. It makes me happy. There's our penguin. It's been given a specific height of 300 pixels. We can also change that to like 500 pixels. And it grows it, as you guys can see, so that grows. But it still doesn't stop it from shrinking and growing this way. And the text moves with it. And the photo over here won't get any smaller, but it will squidge in. So you can think of lots of interesting ways to use CSS Grid. If you were going to do a full website, perhaps these, you wouldn't have an emoticon for everything. You would have, a nice title area with some information, and then below that you might have a couple pictures, and the pictures are going to respond to you as it grows. And you can make it so that they are specific sizes, that they don't get any smaller or larger. You can make all those choices, especially when you start going into your CSS here and accessing each of the sections themselves. Okay, so thank you guys so much for trying this out with me today. I'm sure we will have a much better time next time with much less hiccups. We'll be doing the same one again, most likely next week. So if you didn't understand something, or if you just want to wait for me to get better at explaining it, although I do this quite often, when you go to teach it, it gets very confusing. I'm going to go over my additional resources as I normally do. So Stack Overflow, a great resource. W3 Schools, I don't know where I'd be without it. And then also YouTube, of course, because they have some great, some really, really great videos that you can watch. Myself, I do have a Skillshare subscription. So if you guys have any ideas of stuff that you would like to learn, I will hands down learn it for you and give you a little lesson on it. We probably could have split Flex and Grid into two separate courses, and maybe we'll do that next time. But I'd like to say thank you and I hope you enjoyed. I want you to stay tuned for our next amazing night, which obviously, if you guys want to send messages or email me, let me know other stuff you'd like to learn. I'm super happy to learn it for you. And place comments and suggestions in the chat if you have an idea for our next night. Obviously, this is where Sarah and myself always say, please be my friend. So we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we also have YouTube. We're adding a whole bunch of new content to our YouTube, and it's just getting better and better and exciting. YouTube has worked wonder for my co-op. Yeah, exactly. And Grid seems to be a little neater than Flexbox. It definitely is, because it does give you that option of working on both axes as opposed to just one or the other. Another thing you can do, you can mix Flexbox and Grid together. I thought that was just a little bit too much to add to tonight's night, but you can mix them together and use them like at the same time. And that is our night. Thank you so much for joining. If you guys wanna, you can turn on your mics. I don't know if you can, but you can turn on your mics and say hi or bye or all the things. It's up to you guys. And I'll stop my share of my screen now. There we go. You guys can go have dinner and snack out and have a really awesome weekend. I'm really happy to at least see your names, because I know not everybody has video. So it's great to see you guys. And I look forward to seeing you again either next week or in a couple weeks. Okay, bye guys. And if you need any help, you can just stay online and we'll talk about whatever it was. Bye. See yas.